From jaw-dropping designs to legendary engineering, the world of collectible cars has been hitting the gas on record-breaking prices. In 2022, a stunning 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR, known as the Uhlenhaut Coupe, shattered records, selling for an astonishing $142 million. That's nearly $100 million more than the previous high. But what drives collectors to spend these mind-boggling sums? Is it passion, prestige, or pure obsession? Today, we're taking you on a thrilling ride through the 23 most expensive auction cars of all time. Buckle up as we explore how these dream machines are redefining the limits of value in the automobile world. Number 23, 1954, Ferrari 375 Plus Spyder. Few automakers have a racing history quite like that of Ferrari. The prancing horse dominated nearly every field it entered in the early post-war era. One of its finest race cars from this period is the 375 Plus Spyder. The long-nosed convertible was as powerful as it was beautiful, thanks to its V12 engine. It was also a huge success on the track, claiming victory at Le Mans, Silverstone, and the Carrera Panamericana road race. Despite this, Ferrari only built 4 examples of the vehicle, just 3 of which are still around today. This particular 375 Plus Spyder, which was fully restored at Medina, was the first to roll off the line, which might explain why one collector spent $18.31 million for it back in 2014. Number 22, 1961, Ferrari 250 California SWB Spyder. Ferrari is what is today because of the 250, its most successful early model line. It's hard to pick the best version from the 12 years it was in production, but near the top has to be the 250 California SWB Spyder, one of the greatest convertibles of the last century. The Roadster was designed specifically for export to North America by Scaglietti. This particular example, which was once owned by French film star Alain Delon, was finished in dark blue, rather than the brand's trademark Rosso Corsa, over a black imitation leather interior, and is one of just 37 built with covered headlights. One especially intriguing aspect about this car was that it was almost in its original state when it sold for $18.4 million in 2015, having spent most of the previous 5 decades tucked away in a French barn. Number 21, 1939, Alfa Romeo 8C 2900B Touring Berlinetta. The Alfa Romeo 8C 2900 was the fastest car you could buy before World War II. There was more to it than its mechanical might, though. The vehicle, specifically the Carrozzeria Touring Berlinetta version, was also one of the most elegant cars of the era, leading some to dub it a rolling masterpiece. This is the second of 5 examples of the touring-bodied variant ever built, and with the others on display at the Alfa Romeo Museum or winning awards at vintage car shows, it's no wonder its new owner paid $18.5 million for it in 2019. Number 20. 2013 Mercedes-AMG Petronas F1W04. Lewis Hamilton may share the record for most Formula One drivers' championships with Michael Schumacher, but there is another area where he's pulled ahead of his historic rival: most expensive race car. Earlier this year, the first vehicle the Brit drove to victory after joining Mercedes-AMG Petronas sold for a jaw-dropping $18.8 million in the run-up to the inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix. The racer was the only one of Hamilton's Mercedes F1 cars not owned by the German marque, team principal Toto Wolff, or the driver himself, and one lucky collector wasn't about to let the opportunity pass them by. Number 19, 1939. Alfa Romeo 8C 2900 Lungo Spyder. Alfa Romeo's 8C 2900B. Touring Berlinetta may have been elegant, but another variant, the 2900 Luongo Spyder, was just flat out cool. The open-top version of the vehicle was Alfa Romeo's and Italy's answer to the Bugatti Atlantic, mixing style and performance like few cars before or after. Only 32 examples of the 8C 2900 Luongo Spyder were ever built, and this is one of just 12 touring convertibles that exist to this day. In fact, the Spyder, which sold for $19.8 million in 2016, is so rare that this gorgeous black example remains the only one to be offered at public auction this century. Number 18, 1994, McLaren F1. You'd be forgiven for thinking so, but not all the cars on this list are from a bygone era. Take, for example, the McLaren F1. Although it's nearly 27 years old at this point, the defining supercar of the 1990s still looks remarkably fresh and modern, which might be why so many brands and designers continue to borrow from its design. The Gordon Murray-designed coupe isn't just a looker though. It also has a Formula One derived V12 that briefly made it the world's fastest production car. Take all that into consideration, and it's little wonder that this one of two LM specification examples sold for just shy of $20 million in 2019. Number 17. 1995 McLaren F1. As you probably gathered from the last entry, McLaren's F1 might be the most treasured vehicle of the modern era. McLaren built just 106 examples during its 6 years in production, only 64 of which were street legal. This Creighton Brown example is a true beauty, but what really makes it stand out is the number on the odometer, 242 miles. That's right, this car has been driven less than 10 miles per year since it came off the line back in 1995. No wonder it sold for over $20 million, even more than the previous F1 on this list last year. Number 16. 1963. Aston Martin DP 215 competition. Few things appeal to collectors more than something that's one of a kind. That is why no one was surprised when this Aston Martin DP 215 competition sold for $20.4 million in 2018. The beautiful vehicle is a 1963 prototype, the last of 4 project cars the automaker made while David Brown was in charge of the marque, that would actually race at Le Mans months after its conception. It didn't win that year's race, but it was the first car to break the 300 km/h barrier at the race when it hit a top speed of 319.6 km/h on the famous Mulsanne Straight. Number 15. 1955 Jaguar D-Type. Ever wonder why enthusiasts are so obsessed with Jaguar's mid-century race cars? The D-Type, built from 1954 through 1957, is the answer. Few race cars have paired looks and performance quite so effectively. This particular 1955 example, which was raced by Scottish outfit Écurie Écosse, was the overall winner at Le Mans the year after it was built, earning the automaker its 4th of 5 victories at the race. The legendary blue and white racer is the only one of these Le Mans winning Jaguars still intact, which is why it sold for $21.7 million in 2016. Better yet, it's so well cared for that it looks basically identical to how it did when it earned its famous victory. Number 14. 1935 Duesenberg model SSJ convertible. Duesenberg may be long gone, but it's not been forgotten by enthusiasts. This gorgeous 1935 convertible is a big reason why. It was specifically built for one of the biggest stars of Hollywood's golden age, Gary Cooper, and paired a supercharged Model J engine with gorgeous coachwork by Legrande. Only 2 examples of the Roadster were ever built. The other went to Clark Gable, who, legend has it, would use it to race Cooper, which might explain why the car ended up more than doubling its pre-sale estimate when sold for $22 million at Pebble Beach in 2018. Number 13. 1955 Ferrari 410 Sport Spyder. Ferrari built so many incredible race cars during the 1950s that it can be hard to pick a favorite, unless you were Carroll Shelby. The racer and automotive visionary considered the 1955 410 Sport Spyder the best Ferrari he ever drove. He wasn't alone in his love for the V12-powered prancing horse, which was driven by some of the best drivers of the era, including Juan Manuel Fangio, Phil Hill, and Maston Gregory. The 400-horsepower beast wasn't just fun to drive though. Chassis non-zero 598 centimeters, which sold for $22 million earlier this year, was also a consummate winner, claiming the top spot in 11 races and making the podium in 19 more between 1956 and 1958. Number 12. 1956 Ferrari 290mm. Most 1950s Ferrari race cars experienced some sort of success, but few proved themselves on 3 continents. This 1956 290mm chassis number 0628, which was an official Scuderia Ferrari works car during the 1956 and 1957 seasons, did just that. Driven by some of the era's greatest drivers, including Juan Manuel Fangio, Phil Hill, and Sir Stirling Moss, it finished on the podium at the Mille Miglia in Italy, the 1,000 kilometers of Buenos Aires, and the Nassau Memorial Trophy Race in the Bahamas, just to name a trio of strong results. This particular example was the final of 4, built by the Prancing Horse, only 3 of which survive to this day, so it's hard to argue with its $22 million sale price. Number 11. 1956. Aston Martin DBR1 Roadster. The DB5 may be the most famous Aston Martin, but the British marque's most important model was the DBR1 Roadster. That's why it's little surprise that the first of the 4 examples built is its most expensive car, having sold for $22.5 million in 2017. It didn't sell for that much because it was the first to roll off the production line though. The beautifully restored green Roadster was also the car that racing legend Sir Stirling Moss drove to his famous come-from-behind victory at the Nürburgring 1000 km in 1959. Number 10. 1964. Ferrari 275 GTBC. All Ferrari 275 GTBs are special, but few stand out quite like the Scuderia Ferrari team's Berlinetta Competizione cars, styled by Scaglietti. Only 3 were built for competition in the 1965 24 Hours of Le Mans. The color most closely associated with the Prancing Horse may be Rosso Corsa, but there's something particularly alluring about those finished in another hue. This particular 275 GTBC is finished in metallic dark gray, with a lighter shade acting as a center racing stripe. It didn't end up competing in the endurance race, which goes a long way to explaining why it was in such pristine condition when it sold for $26.4 million in 2014. Number 9. 1967. Ferrari 275 GTB4 Nart Spyder. The 275 GTB is one of the most desirable Ferraris of all time. This can be an annoyance for collectors desperate to add one to their repertoire, because it pushes the car's prices even higher than the brand's other models from the era, especially if enthusiasts have their heart set on a rare spec example, such as the Nart Spyder, of which there are only 10. That's what helped push bidding for this beautifully restored, matching numbers, example to $27.5 million. It's a very good thing that bidding reached such a high peak though, as the proceeds from the sale were donated to charity. Number 8. 1956. Ferrari 2 90mm. You're not seeing double, there are 2 different 1956 Ferrari 2 90mm, both of which were built to compete in that year's Mille Miglia among the 10 most valuable auction cars of all time. As has been well established by now, the Prancing Horse's 1950 racers were something special. This one has the distinction of having been designed specifically for Juan Manuel Fangio, a 5-time Formula 1 champion and one of the greatest drivers of all time. There's more to the open-top speed demon than the man who raced it though. It's also a stunningly beautiful car that features a distinctive blue and yellow nose. Combine all that and it's no wonder it sold for $28 million. Number 7. 1954. Mercedes-Benz W196. Few race cars have been more successful than the Mercedes-Benz W196. The successor to the W194 was famously driven by both Juan Manuel Fangio and Sir Stirling Moss during the 1954 and 1955 Formula 1 seasons, winning 9 of the 12 races it was entered in and 2 world championships. This particular example, which is finished in silver with white racing gumballs, was the first to claim victory at the 1954 French Grand Prix. It's also the only example not held in a factory or museum collection, which is why someone leaped at the chance to pay $29.6 million for it. Number 6. 1967. Ferrari 412 P Berlinetta. You won't find many Ferrari race cars rarer than the 412 P Berlinetta. The Italian marque only built 2 examples of the gorgeous vehicle, which is the customer version of the successful 330 P3 and P4 race cars. An additional 2 330 P3S were converted to 412 Ps. The gorgeous prototype racer combines a rear-mounted 4.0-liter V12 with the P3's chassis and the P4's body, suspension, and wheels. This example was the second of the original 412P Berlinettas and helped Ferrari claim the World Championship of Makes in 1967. Somehow, the car's sale in August 2023 was something of a disappointment, falling $10 million short of what some thought it would go for. Still, that shouldn't take away from just how majestic this competition-proven Ferrari is. Number 5. 1957. Ferrari 335S. There are race cars that were built by Ferrari, and then there are those that actually raced for the Italian marca. Of those, the 1957 335S just might be the very finest. It's not the most valuable of the Marcus racers, having been sold by Art Curial for $35.7 million. It's close, but it is the one that enabled the prancing horse to win the Constructors' World Championship in 1957, while also finishing second at the final Mille Miglia. As tends to be the case with these vehicles, it was also piloted by some of Ferrari's finest drivers that season, including Peter Collins, Wolfgang von Trips, and Luigi Musso, during that most successful of seasons. Number 4. 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. It would be hard to pin down the most iconic Ferrari of all time, but if there's a single model that qualifies, it's the 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. The prancing horse built just 36 examples of the street-legal race car, powered by a 3.0-liter V12, all of which somehow survive to this day. This particular example, chassis number 3851 GT, was owned by Fabrizio Violati for 49 years, and Violati actually entered it in races. There were high expectations for the car when Bonhams put it up for bid in 2014, but that didn't make it any less stunning when it sold for a then record $38.1 million. Number 3. 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. It was fitting that Violati's Ferrari 250 GTO would be knocked off its throne by another 250 GTO. 4 years after the heavily raced Ferrari went for $38.12 million, RM Sotheby's sold another dazzling example for $48.4 million. Despite the sizable price difference, you're really splitting hairs trying to differentiate the two coupes. Still, the more expensive 250 GTO was the third to roll off the line and is overwhelmingly original, retaining over 95% of the parts it left the factory with. No wonder someone was willing to pay an extra $10 million for it. Number 2. 1962 Ferrari 330 LM 250 GTO. As the list up until now has made abundantly clear, there's no mark that captures the imagination of collectors like Ferrari. And at the top of the pyramid of prancing horses is parked the 250 GTO. This example of the V12-powered stunner may not have had the most illustrious of competitive careers, though it did win its class at the Nürburgring 1,000 kilometers in 1962, but it was one of just two raced by the marque's in-house team, Scuderia Ferrari. Add that to the fact that it has won its fair share of awards on the classic car show circuit in the decades since, and it's little surprise that the beautifully maintained Nart 7 car sold for $51.7 million last month. Don't be surprised if its gavel price is beaten in the next 4 to 5 years though, especially with how things have gone over the last decade. Number 1. 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe. Records are meant to be broken, and 4 years after the Ferrari, 250 GTO became the most expensive car for a second time when it went for $48.4 million. The 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe sold for $142 million. That's right, it broke the previous mark by $93.5 million, with the entire sum going to the newly established Mercedes-Benz Fund, a global scholarship program meant to aid young people working to make the world a more sustainable place. The silver prototype racer isn't just the most expensive auction car, it is the priciest vehicle period. While that sum is still shocking to look at, those familiar with the car, one of two designed to race in the 1955 Carrera Panamericana before it was called off, know the silver speed machine is more than deserving of its spot on this list. We also have a feeling that it might hold onto its title a bit longer than the previous record holder. And there you have it, the ultimate lineup of dream machines that have rewritten the history books with their jaw-dropping price tags. From engineering marvels to timeless designs, these cars prove that passion knows no price. Which one was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. And if you loved this video, don't forget to hit subscribe for more mind-blowing automotive stories.